I think that the public service profession is under attack now that I've never seen before. How are we going to get young men and women to be public servants to go into this field? One of the things I've been trying to do is to promote the field of city management.
Today, we are talking about what local government can learn from real world case studies. I'm Angelica Wedell, and I am thrilled to be joined by one of the brilliant minds behind our new book, Managing Local Government Cases and Effectiveness. It's the second edition. So I'm joined by Robert Blair. Hi, Robert. Hi, Bob.
Hello, hello. Glad to be here.
And Bob is one of the editors of the book, and he is also a professor emeritus for the School of Public Administration at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. And so today we will discuss the book and why case-based learning is so powerful, why it's such a great tool for local government leaders. Okay, but first, Bob, tell us more about yourself. You have an amazing background.
well, thank you, thank you. I have an amazing background because I've been around for a long time. I think that's the key. But I retired from the University of Nebraska Omaha after a 31-year career, and in that time I was a researcher and then a full-time professor. But before that, I spent 18 years in state and local government. So I've been called a pracademic, somebody who is not just I didn't get my PhD until I didn't even start till I was almost 40 years old. So I was in the classroom with much younger people, but I had been my earlier career before I became a professor. I was in city government. I became was got to the position of assistant city manager in a community, and then I switched careers a little bit and started doing economic development at the state level. Then I started doing community development, going out in smaller communities, helping them develop economic plans, and that's how I uh, found myself at university. Because then I started doing SF University, and then I got my PhD. But at the university, I ran the urban studies program and also the local government management program. And even though I've retired, I tell people I just retired from the university. I have since I've retired, I have written 3 books and have been to Canada twice on Fulbright fellowships, and so I keep it active. I keep it active, and so I. Uh, my affiliation with ICMA goes back decades and decades, and most recently I've been active as an academic on a couple of committees. So that's a little bit about my background.
So today you're going to learn because of that amazing background. Y'all are going to hear things that will help you if you're in the United States, but also with a global perspective as well, because he has traveled, he has worked with local government leaders from all over the world, in Canada, in South
In Norway,
America, right?
Norway.
Norway, all over the place. And so we're really excited to get to learn. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Now, let me tell everybody about the book itself so that way we all have a little bit of an idea about what the topic areas are in that book. And then we'll get into the interview questions.
Okay.
So let's get into it. So basically, for decades, ICMA has supported local government professionals with real world insights that's really important to us. And this new book, this new edition, continues that tradition. It has more than 20 brand new and updated case studies. This has been updated this year in January of 2025. This is a new book. And these are real world dilemmas, they're real decisions, they're daily realities that local government managers face. They cover everything from ethics to finance to leadership. There's community engagement, service delivery, and a whole lot more. And so, what makes this edition especially exciting is the collaboration behind it. Now, many of these case studies were co authored by both practitioners and academics. And so it brings theory and practice together in a way that's really valuable for the classroom setting, but also for local government training. And I would argue that the current local government practitioners that are here today, that y'all would also like this book too, because I know you're always looking for ways to see what other communities are doing, what's been successful in other cities, and what ideas you might want to try to innovate with for your own residents as well. So let's go ahead and get into those questions. But do you have any other comments? You want to add anything about the book and what it's about, Bob?
Well, and Angelica, that's a great summary. I will elaborate on a few of the key points that you brought up. But that's a great summary. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, so then let's go ahead and start with the big picture here. You know, what inspired this book? Why did we decide to update it? Why did you decide to get behind this? And why now?
Okay. Well, a couple things. I have as an academic, I was the chair of NASPA's, the National Association of Schools of Public Affairs Administration. They had a local government education committee, and I was chair of that committee, and also I was co-chair of the ICMA graduate education committee. So there was a connection between the academics and the practitioner, and I was approached by the president of the NASPA, and she said, "We have been NASPA and ICMA have been partners for 50 years, and let's have a publication that would be that would demonstrate and champion that partnership." And the case study book made a lot of sense. We decided to start doing that. So a lot of the background for the book came from both academics and the practitioners, and so there was a real a push on that. So we started doing that. So that's the technical part of why we started doing it. I have a personal thing too. Uh, when I was in graduate school, I had one goal in my life, and that was to be a city manager. And so I studied MPA. And so uh, I had a case study book that I studied many years ago as part of the Green Book series. And this is the book that I had. This is the very first edition of the case
That's
study
it.
book from 1964.
That's it.
That's
The
that's
actual book.
that's the yeah the part of the case study book. And so
Wow.
one of the things I wanted to do is give back to the profession. I had studied that when I was in my 20s, and then when I wanted to give back to profession, I think in no better way than to update the case study book. So that's sort of the background to it. So there has been several editions of the book. This is the second edition of a specific case study book, but the case study books go back 60 years at least.
You know, they always say, what's the cliche? If we don't know our past, we can't prepare for the future, or we'll be doomed to make the same mistakes
That's
over and
right.
over.
That's right. That's
Something
right.
like that.
Yeah, so that was the book I studied many years ago, many years ago. So anyway, that's sort of the background for it.
Well, that's awesome. And I think that it's really neat to see the history that you actually have that book right there in your office. And then we get to talk about the changes too, because now we've got this new book that builds on those foundations. And so I think that's really going to help leaders have what they need to really move forward by studying what works and understanding, seeing what's going on in other places in the past and in the future. So if you can get your hands on the other book too, I think it's all great. Read them both.
Yes.
Now, these case studies in the new book, these are rooted in actual local government challenges, things that have really truly happened. So, to give us an example, can you talk about what kinds of pressures or decisions that city managers today are dealing with?
Yeah, I think that if you go back and look at the book that I studied as a grad student back in the 70s, uh, I mean, there's themes that come through, things like budget and personnel and finance and some of those sort of things. But I think today uh, there's a whole range of new and I think even more challenging issues that managers have to deal with. clearly budgets are still are that way, especially with the kind of things that are they're coming out of Washington D.C. I think those budgets challenges of balancing a budget and hiring qualified people. That's always gonna be there. But there's new things too. I think that this day and age that we're in a very toxic political environment and the kind of discourse that takes place and uh, uh, having civil discussions and things like that in council meetings is something
Mhm.
that's really something that managers have to deal with all the time. And I would add too that my whole career has been as a public servant. I mean, either
Mhm.
working in cities, assisting cities, teaching people to be city managers. Uh, but I think that the public service profession is under attack now that I've never seen before. And I mean, that's a real concern. Is how are we going to get young men and women to be public servants to go into this field? I think that's a huge issue, and one of the things I've been trying to do is to promote the field of city management. It's a real challenge. So I think there's those sort of things that are going on that put pressures on city managers today that we didn't see when I started studying this stuff many years ago. So and as an educator in public administration, uh, encouraging young men and women to go into this field is a huge challenge. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have now.
Now, thinking about the folks that are watching now, some of these folks they may be leading departments themselves. They might be a city manager themselves. They might be in a position where they're training others and they're mentoring staff, or they could be academics as well. They could be students. But what do you think is a good way to bring these case studies into training or into the real world and actually apply the concepts that are learned?
Well, a couple of ways I think that can be done. I think uh, in the past I have assisted in at the ICMA conference where they have sessions on managers as teachers, and so I think some of the best teachers of city management are city managers, and so I think this kind of case study book would be very helpful in the classroom. It would be help people in the classroom, and so I think working with that ICMA conference. But I think that the book, as you mentioned, Angelica, is it's useful. I think to workshops too, to things that can be done. And the way we laid the book out, there's a couple. We have a couple matrices. We actually at the very beginning of the book, and one of the matrices is we took the case studies, and we labeled them, identified them by subject area. So if they want to do something in public works, they do something in budgeting, something in finance, something in council manager relations. We had case studies that would address those things. So if there's an issue in a community that they want to focus on, you can they can look through the case studies, look at a matrix, and then they could identify that. So one of the by subject areas. The other thing that we did is that we also label the cases by the 14 management competencies that ICMA has identified as these are the competencies that are useful to city managers. Uh, and in fact, many years ago, I was on the committee of managers and administrators and academics that helps identify some of those. So it's nice to see that those things come to fruit. So anyway, skill levels, skills, and or subject areas. So they can be used in a number of ways. The way that we laid out the case studies is that, as you mentioned, they're collaborations between not every single case study, but the vast majority of them has at least two authors, an academic and a practitioner. And the way that we did that is that we wanted the real world examples that were brought together by the administrators and practitioners, and then the academics would take that experience and make it into uh, a learning experience. So it's not just reading about the cases, but what does the case represent, and what can we learn from this case? What can we learn from the outcomes?
That's really smart that you had a collaboration between the academics and the practitioners. So that way it's not just, let me tell you a story about what happened in my community, but then those academics can help with the teaching aspect side of it. That's
Exactly.
really smart.
That's exactly what I mean. I wish I was the one that would come up with that idea in general, but it was a discussion that we had among the two committees I was on, and for me, straddling both committees, I think helped bring that to the head. I think to come up with that idea.
That's so smart. I love that. This is the second edition, so it's really covering a lot of these major 21st century issues that we're dealing with that we mentioned before, but things like health, safety, ethics, intergovernmental collaboration. But among all of this, do you have any favorite success stories you could highlight for us?
Yes, and gosh, it happened to be the case study that I wrote, of course.
Of
And
course, yes.
I wrote three of them in collaboration with managers. The one that I really like is one the case study that uh, pertain to the way that two suburban fire departments merged. One was a one was a full-time professional fire department, and the other one was the city right next to it. They're both suburban area. They're both suburban, and the one suburban was volunteer, and they couldn't keep full-time people. They couldn't keep people on volunteers because they were working in other places, working in Omaha rather than being in the community. So that's a real success story about how community, and this is intergovernmental collaboration. That's what I underlined in the question. So this is, I think that's so important today, and I've studied that too. Is how can government entities work together to provide a better service? And so the fire service in those two communities is the fire protection is much better since they combined. And so I wrote that working with the city administrator, and she and her fire chief provided the information, and then I pulled the case study together. So that was I think that's an important area is collaboration.
Yes. So not only were they collaborating, did they end up saving a lot of money because of that
Yeah.
condensing of services?
Well, I think yeah, it was they probably saved some money, but what they did is improve the protection. There was a rural
Mm,
fire district, and then there was which is a volunteer, and then they merged with the other with the city, the larger city. But what they did is they vastly improved fire protection
mm.
for the whole area. So it included the two cities, which they're right next to each other, but they're suburbs of Omaha. And of
Right.
course,
So then the smaller communities get just the same level of fire protection as the larger community that had more resources originally.
exactly that. So that's the way they did that. And in every case study, except for two of them, uh, they're based on real examples, but we were advised to create names. So we come up with some interesting names for some of the communities. But I can go back to every single one of them and say, okay, that's from this city, that's from that city. But we had to make it hypothetical for
Right,
learning.
absolutely.
Yeah,
For learning and safety reasons and
exactly. Yeah, that's what the ICMA editor Anna suggested pretty strongly.
let's talk about moving forward. So Bob, if people only remember one thing from this entire conversation, what do you want them to take away?
Okay. Well, you're asking a professor to come up with one thing, right?
I'm sorry.
I'll try my best. Okay. I think that and you had mentioned earlier case studies are more than just descriptions of what happened. I think it's important that we have to look at case studies as learning examples, and where students and practitioners can learn from other people. And so that was the whole idea. We want to be sure it was a learning example, uh, and to be sure that we did that also, that for instructors we have available through ICMA in an online instructor's manual. And in the instructor's manual, what that does is provides an aftermath. So in every case, there was the real examples, and so students would go through and come up with their recommendations, because every case study they came to a decision point. Something had to be done, and so they have that. They discuss it, and then there's an aftermath. And from my experience, students love to find out, Professor Blair, what really happened? What really happened? And so we have that for everyone in the case study. So not just a book, but there's an aftermath. So that would be something, I guess, important to think about.
So you're not just learning, but what are you doing? What's the action that you're taking? How do I actually make a difference in my community, or how do I actually improve my skills so that way when I become a city manager, I'm at the best of my ability?
Yes, and the fact that every case study, that uh, these examples are not unique. They cut across many communities, and so you can learn from other people. And so when something like that comes up in your community, you can say, okay,
Mhm.
here's the principles, here's the code of ethics that I need to look at, that can help address those issues.
Absolutely, because we all do face a lot of the same types of challenges in local government. We're not islands unto ourselves, if you will. Yes.
That's true.
Is there anything else you want to add?
Yes, I do. One last thing is that when people begin to use the book, Kim Nelson at North Carolina, Chapel Hill, she and I are the editors. We would love to get feedback. So when people use the book and say, okay, this was good, this may be something that you can improve on, or we would really like to have feedback when people start using this book as a learning tool. The feedback is very important.
Yes. Thank you for that. So if y'all have feedback, please send it on. Send it on to ICMA. We'll share it with Bob. And if you have any questions about the book, feel free to let us know. Now, it's called Managing Local Government Cases in Effectiveness, and it is the second edition. And thank you for coming and sharing your expertise with us. It's really special and rare to be able to have the opportunity to talk to an actual editor of a book, a co-author of a book like that, and really get to see behind the scenes and learn from you as well. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure.